on the same page. So do we want to consider across the river as just one way across or across and back?
One way across.
So how many of you would like to say just one time across is across the river? Because if you're trying to get to the other side, you're not going to go back once you're done, right?
Yeah.
So it's really just about going across the river. It's just going to take a couple of trips to get everyone across, but once you get across, you don't go back.
So I guess my point is I don't see the point in counting the adult having to go back over the river as a journey across the river for the sake of our count.
It says children.
Huh?
It says get all the children across. It doesn't say one adult.
Right. So 19 campers are hiking through Acadia National Park. When they come to the river moves too rapidly for them to swim across. The campers have one canoe, which holds 3 people. And that's all we're putting in the canoe. We're not going to overtax it. On each trip across the river, one of the 3 canoe riders must be an adult. So we're going to, since we're having trouble coming to a consensus, I'll just tell you what I want it to be. Which is, you're going to go, every time you go across, it's going to count as 1. So how many trips across the river does that boat have to make before everyone's to the other side? You can choose to do it another way, and sometimes coming to a consensus is good. But if you can't come to a consensus, sometimes it becomes a benevolent dictatorship. Always benevolent. Show your work.
There it is. Draw a picture, man. I just have a picture in my head.
Did we do this in CI? Well, we do. Well, in Knowing and Learning, we do the hobbits and orcs.
Yeah.
But I do. We do this in CI.
I feel
We do this in CI.
We didn't do it again. We did a riddle on the.
But I think it was last semester. Yeah, last semester. Okay, how many of you need another minute? Okay.
We did that one.
We got 1 more minute. So, share with someone close to you what you got as an answer. Share with them how you got your answer. You lost. That's not good. What did you get? You'll figure it out?
Not in a cake. Two each time, right?
You got how many? John, how many did you get?
I think there's a lot.
Okay, so let me ask you a question. I want you to compare the way you solved the problem. Now, over here, we have our kinesthetic folks. Did you solve this in a kinesthetic way that you would consider
I would
kinesthetic?
like to have had people that I could move.
You had some manipulations? Yeah.
But
That would have helped you with this problem? Okay. Now, I'm looking, and there are pictures and images and arrows and a lot of movement as it relates to this process that I've seen. Sammy, how'd you solve it?
I just kind of, I did like one version and then just kind of wrote it out like.
Real quick and simple,
Yeah.
concise. Okay, what about our visual folks? Did you guys, okay, so we don't have pictures over here in the visual. We've got mathematics. We've got division going on. So the house, is that what you call the house? The division bar? Is that what you call it?
I've never given it.
Yeah, under the house.
Under the house? Yeah, so they got under the house. You get under the house?
I made it a fraction.
Fraction.
Yeah, that's what
Visualize it up here, okay, okay. And the multimodal people, how many of you drew, like, you had like this side of the river, you had this side of the river, and trips and trips and trips and trips, okay?
I did in my head.
In your head, did you visualize anything, or was it all, the mathematics of it?
No, I visualized like, it looked like a really old 8-bit video game where there was like a little thing that represented bows, and there was 3 little circles that represented, and I just kept imagining going back and forth.
So you went from visual to mathematics, to a representation, symbolic.
I guess.
Okay, here's my question for you. When you think about the way that, this is just one example, the way that you solved this problem, and we got a large group of multimodal. We usually always have some multimodal, but not usually the majority, which is actually a good thing. But when you think about the way you solved it, would you say that it would be maybe different than your dominant, what was calculated as your dominant way of learning based on the DART survey?
Yes.
Some of you say yes?
I think it was only maybe different based on, I guess, what I had available.
Okay.
Yeah,
We were limited, we didn't have manipulatives.
I
right?
agree. I think I did like what a visual learner would have done. Like I was sitting there drawing the pictures out of
Why?
what would happen.
Why did you do it that way?
Because I didn't have people to actually
You
move
went to your
them.
next
Yeah.
option. That's a good question. Is doodling kinesthetic? I would consider it certainly
Yeah,
could be, because even the act of writing is kinesthetic,
I didn't know
right?
if I was just keeping track of what I was thinking, or if I was actually drawing. I don't know.
So you will see there are a lot of different learning style surveys. And, I'm not even good with time frames, but over, I'd say the last 20 years, help me out here, 20 years-ish, learning styles have been popular, determining your learning style, and helping students learn by using their learning style. And the latest research shows that the majority of us, by far, are multimodal. We can learn in many different ways. Now, while we may have certain preferences for certain things, I even heard those conversations from you, that it depends on what I'm doing. If I'm cooking, I want it this way. If I'm stringing a guitar, I want it this way. That it's really contextual. It's very, very contextual. And so we've also, in literature, have heard that we tend to teach the way that we were taught or the way that we prefer to learn. And not all of our students learn like we learn, right? And so when you think about what this means for your students in terms of learning, tell me some takeaways that you might think about as it relates to teaching and learning.
Maybe you should poll your students as to how they feel that they learned the best.
Okay? So I'm finding out from your students.
I actually took the test in middle school. That was the first thing we did on class day, and we had to turn in the results to our teacher.
So did your teacher do anything with those, or was it just like a first day thing?
I wouldn't say it was differentiated really well into what she was doing, but she did take it, like, there was definitely more visual learners in her class. And she did a really good job of drawing pictures. Now, I don't know if she did that every year, but she did do, like, an emphasis on what was most common in the class.
I think it may be important just to do them all. For example, the class I was in today, and actually the teacher and I talked about it, was they read out loud. So the kids had the book, they were following along, and they read it, and then she had the computer up. It was a keyboarding class, and she actually demonstrated what they were going over and pointed it out. is visual as well. And then I think some of the kids had already done some of it, so they'd already had the demonstration. So we actually talked about her differentiating teaching styles today. So she's like, yeah, so that way I hit everybody and I don't have to worry about, because I was talking to her about her students that have IEPs and other things. She said, well, I do that, so I really don't even have to worry about their IEPs because I've covered all the bases with my teaching style. So she hits them all.
Now, I just want to interject, because I wasn't in that room and I'm not negating that teacher at all whatsoever, but you have to be very familiar with the IEPs because there may be real specific things, but
Well, I
she's getting all
specifically
the
asked her about
styles.
the visual, and she
Oh, I
said,
see.
I cover that.
Yeah.
And,
in her
and
teaching.
I cover a lot of the other ones because of
She's
the way
teaching
that I do it.
multimodally.
That's how our Spanish teacher was, Miss Austin. They read from the book, they made a foldable, they watched a movie, they wrote sentences down in Spanish. I didn't know what they were talking about, but I could tell how they were doing it.
Sure.
Yeah, I was in that same class, and kind of like you're saying, she went over each one. So she said, all right, so we're going to talk about it, we're going to listen to it, you're going to write it down, and then we're all going to talk to each other about it, and then we'll do other little things. And then, like he said, they made the foldables, and the word was tener, to have, in Spanish, and so they would write what yo, to, and all of them.
They were conjugated.
Mhm. And so it was just very interactive for each student. So something that I noticed was at the beginning, students were like, I still don't get it. So she would do a self-assessment plus class assessment during the class saying, okay, who understands it right now? Half of them would raise their hand. Who understood like 5 words? A couple of them and stuff like that. And so then she would do the next assignment, which would be listening to it. So then she'd do another assessment, and then more hands would go up, and more hands would go up.
Constantly assessing to see where they are.
And so at the end of class, they did a Kahoots little game over the words, and I think it was like a 95 passing rate on it. Like almost every student was getting it right. There were maybe 2 or 3 that would get it wrong, and some of them would just click to try to get the fastest answer and get it wrong. But for the most part, everyone was getting the answer right at that point, which I saw that as like a differentiating instruction, but it was also just progressive. Every time you could see a change or progression in the class.
And Kahoots is a cell phone quiz thing,
Yeah.
for y'all that don't know.
I thought I was the only one that didn't know, so it felt kind of funny. Whenever I was watching, I was like, this is fun. I want to join.
So what does that have to do with differentiating instruction?
We have different learning people that learn differently. We have to accommodate people.
Accommodate? Okay. So what are some other ways? Yeah.
Oh, well, I was just saying that with differentiating instruction isn't only to accommodate, it's also to hold their attention. That's why like when you're observed, one of the things that you're graded on is differentiating your tone. It holds attention. If you do one thing constantly, you're not going to hold their attention. You're going to lose them. So you change it not only to accommodate, but also just to keep them there.
So motivate, inspire, keep them engaged. Anything else you want to add to that? Any other ways to differentiate? Let's see. Okay, so here's a cartoon and a guy, you might have seen this one before. So we got a bird, and a monkey, and a penguin, and an elephant, goldfish, seal, and a dog. For fair selection, everybody has to take the same example. Please climb that tree.
Elephant looks stuck. Says the fish.
How does that relate to us as educators?
I mean, it's the same test, but realistically, only a very small percentage of the people that have to take it is it going to be advantageous for.
So in this context,
It's standardized.
it's standardized, they're all gonna have to have the same performance, right? They're all gonna have to do the same thing, but maybe they may not all be able to do it the same way, right? All right, so what is differentiated instruction? Dylan talked about it, you differentiating in your tone to keep attention. we've talked about that it can be, changing the way that you teach to, whether it's visual or, oral or rewrite or kinesthetic. What else could it be to you?
It can be on levels of ability, as in like the tiers, having different tiers of assignments. That's kind of
So talk to me more about that.
If you know that some of your, like if you have a standard chemistry class or an honors chemistry or an AP, you would have different assignments or different requirements or expectations for each, depending on what that class can actually handle.
I think
And with challenging them a little bit, of course, but.
being in the same classroom, you have the students who excel or get it quickly, and you have the ones that need a little bit more help. So you have essentially an activity, and it's the same activity, you have the same end goal for everybody, but with that activity, you maybe add a little bit more instruction for the lower level students, or you take out some of the instruction for the kids who get it quickly. So you have the same activity, but it's tiered into 3 different levels for accommodating each level of students.
So we've been using a lot of words. Now I'm gonna put you in groups and you're gonna show me with pictures what that looks like in your group. So I'd like you two to get with those two. Sammy, I'd like you to come over here with Ashley and Kyle and Jacob. You 4 and then you 4 get together. You have a choice of whiteboard or there's poster paper. The poster paper is the markers are in a bag. The markers for these are in a bag. You're gonna show me with pictures, images, or symbols, no words, what different instructions mean. Alright? So you got a choice of poster paper with markers in a bag here, or little whiteboards, and those markers are over there.